This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to The Edge, Trek FM show about Star Trek Discovery. I'm Mike, and today I am joined by Max from Tracks from the Edge. How's it going, Max?
It's going fine, Mike. How's it going?
I could not be any better because this week I watched Into the Forest I Go, and let me tell you,
What's that?
God, it's the episode 9 of Star Trek Discovery, and
I've seen that.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that later on in the episode, but it really has me anticipating episode 10 of Star Trek Discovery.
Because it's episode 9, and the next one will be episode 10.
Right, and normally I'm like, oh, right. By the time this comes out, it's like Friday, so it's like we're going into the weekend, and at the end of the weekend is Star Trek Discovery, and it's like I'm sad that the weekend's over, but I'm happy that Star Trek Discovery is here, and I can't wait until 7:30 on Sunday night, and, I'm going to go and watch episode 10, and it's not going to be there. Because they're going on hiatus. So it got me thinking, now they just announced that episode 10 will air on January 7th. That's when they're coming back, which honestly surprised me quite a bit because I think the original plan was for episode 9 to air on January 7th, right? Which means that episode 10 would be on January 14th. And it's like, okay, they're going to have, 8 episodes, a 9-week gap, and then 7 episodes, right? And it's like, okay, that's, a certain dollar, there's a certain dollar figure attached to that with CBS All Access subscriptions and everything, which is obviously why they have this gap, because they're like, well, 8 weeks, that's $20 that we're getting extra for people like us who aren't doing the commercial thing. That's $20 for people to just wait for new Star Trek, and literally not giving them anything, but they're not going to cancel their subscription. So, hey, we might as well take advantage of this situation. And, when they moved episode 9 up to make it the mid-season finale, I thought for sure, they would maintain that 9 weeks of nothing, but they shortened it to 8 weeks of nothing, which means that now the series is in fact ending a week early. Which means that's $2.50 or $1.50, depending on which plan you have, less that they're getting from everyone who's going to cancel Discovery after it goes off the air. So
I mean, ultimately, I know, when I sign up for a service like this, I'll cancel eventually, but I'm not going to cancel when there's nothing for 2 months just because it's not worth the time. It's not worth the time to cancel the subscription. It's just I could spend those $10 on what? A soft pretzel? No, I'm not going to bother. I'll just lose weight because I shouldn't be eating so many soft pretzels.
Yeah, there you go. There is a certain they're counting on people's laziness, and with me, I'm probably going to rewatch the episodes again and again and again or whatever, in that time period. But it's just weird. They're not thinking like Ferengi. Quark would not be proud about the CBS All Access decision makers in terms of their scheduling. But I'm not complaining.
Quark would have would not have a commercial free plan. There would be no commercial free plan.
That's true. But, I'm not complaining myself, because it means that we're going to be getting episode 10 in 8 weeks, which is 56 days. 56 days for this cliffhanger that we have to wait for. And it really got me thinking about, this is just a mid-season cliffhanger. It's not like a season-ending cliffhanger, but it got me thinking about other Star Trek cliffhangers, in particular, Best of Both Worlds, which I did the math. I checked it out. Now, this is 8 weeks. Best of Both Worlds was 14 weeks, which is 98 days. So I
lived through that.
You lived through that. And I want to talk about it because let me tell you my experience watching Best of Both Worlds. It was at the end of the Star Trek The Next Generation Viewer's Choice Marathon in 1993. And I watched part 1. And then, we had Mr. Worf fire. It faded to black. And then I had to sit through, and I'm not kidding here, like a good 90 seconds worth of commercials before part 2 started up. And I honestly did not think that I could make it. But I did. And then I saw part 2. So you had to wait for 14 weeks?
Yep.
How was that? How was that summer?
It's all just a blur. I was building Borg cubes out of Lego and trying to cargo cult Star Trek back on the air because I was also a child. And like the idea of like an hour is an insane amount of time. And the idea of a summer, I mean, who knows what's going to happen by then? I could be dead by then. Who knows? I don't even know how old I'll be. I don't like it's such a crazy amount of time. Like basically for me, like for a good chunk of time, it was as if Star Trek had ended there.
Mm-hmm.
And like knowing that it would eventually come back is not the same thing as thinking it's coming back so far in the future. And like, it was close to the end of school, so like there wasn't a whole bunch of time to sit around and mull it over. But like, there was some time where I would go to school and I would sit in the cafeteria and I'd just be like, he's not dead. He's definitely coming back. That's going to be weird. Oh,
it was kind of like Schrodinger's Borg cube.
Yeah. It was also kind of like it was like the first thought was like if they lose the captain to the Borg and then they bring him back from the Borg, it kind of raises the question of like, could they have brought any of those other guys back? Because they have killed a lot of Borg.
This is true, but none of them are Captain Picard,
Yeah, that's messed up, man. This is what I said to other kids in my grade school at that time. I might have been in junior high at that point.
Yeah, I think you probably would have been like thinking about the time period. I think you probably, or maybe in between, like you going from like 6th grade to 7th grade, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that like I had the conversation at the end of the school year with a group of people, and when the school year started up again, I was at a different school, and none of those people were there. So I was like, "So, I don't know you. You didn't go through what I went through. This was a terribly stressful period, because it was a big deal. It was like the first cliffhanger that like I cared about, like that like I was watching as it happened. Like I know that like my mom had cliffhangers in the past that she had cared about, but like when this happened, like Best of Both Worlds happened, like my mom and I were on the same page. We were like, that was crazy. This is a huge amount of time. And my mom was just like, it's not that big a deal. He'll be fine. She had the adult awareness of like contract negotiations. So like she was like, don't worry about it. He'll be fine. It's going to be cool though.
I think that the best story I've ever heard about someone trying to sort of relay what that summer was like, to someone else was, it was a television writer. I want to say it was Zach Stentz who did this, but he was like showing Next Generation to his kids. They were like watching it together, and it was like one like Sunday afternoon or something like that. And he showed them Best of Both Worlds, part one, and it blew their minds. And they're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And he's like, well, we're going to have to wait 3 hours, 1 hour for every month that I had to wait when I was your age. And they're like, what's wrong with you? You're a monster, But I thought that was kind of perfect.
I have actually adopted like a very similar like thing. Like when I showed it to a girlfriend previously, I was like, okay, so there's that. And she was like, wow, that was great. Like, what happens next? And I was like, okay, so here's the thing. We've reached the point in the show when they went on like summer break, and I sat around and thought about this for all that time. And I'm not going to make you wait 3 months. We're just going to wait, basically as long as you can deal with it. And, it was about 3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Because, at a certain point, you're just like, you're just setting fire to that relationship. And I did eventually, but it was worth it.
Okay. Well, that's cool. The first time that I ever experienced this cliffhanger thing was in the end of season 6 leading into season 7 of Next Gen, which was Descent. And, I had heard, I had seen at that point all the cliffhangers, but, consecutively, and it didn't really, mean anything to me. I had heard the stories, right? So when Descent came on, and I'm like, cliffhanger, I'm looking forward to this experience, right? And I watched not Cliffhanger, which came out I think probably the same year, but I watched Descent, and I was like, oh my god, this. I want to wait until I see part 2, but I think that this might be the best episode of Star Trek ever. Kind of like my reaction to Into the Forest I Go, but whatever. And then, like you're saying, I remember walking around town by myself, with nothing but my thoughts, and just wondering what's going to happen. How is this going to be resolved? And how will my life change after seeing what will undoubtedly be the best episode in Star Trek history? I was very curious about all these things, and it was really kind of awkward because, I hated school as much as everyone else. This would have been when I was going from 7th grade to 8th grade, and I did not want to go back to school at all. I did not want the summer to end, but at the same time, I couldn't wait for the summer to end so that I could see what happened with, Data and Lore and Hugh and the Borg and the whatevers and the Descents and the, and then, it finally aired, and I couldn't wait, and I watched it, and I was like, that's it. That's okay. Well, I'm glad that we waited 3 months for this. And pretty sure I haven't watched it since, but, whatever. So
it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
No. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, man. It's not good. It's not a good episode of Star Trek. Anyway, we're not going to have to wait that long for the next episode of Discovery, but we know that we're getting a season 2, and in the press and stuff like that, these are offhanded comments, but, someone asked Alex Kurtzman on the red carpet somewhere, probably before, the first episode of Discovery even aired, when are we going to get season 2? And he's like, well, if it happens, but whatever. And, there's probably going to be a gap. We probably won't get any more this year. It probably won't start again until, 2019. And if you look at that, if you let's say they started, the same week, let's say they want to wait till after the holidays, and they started up January 6th, 2019, that means that the gap between seasons 1 and seasons 2 of Discovery will be 46 weeks, which is 322 days.
Yep.
So I'm kind of hoping that they do go the Deep Space Nine route and say, like, here is the end, and, you can look forward to a new beginning, but at least you're not going to be, like, sitting around for 322 days with a Mr. Worf fire moment. You know what I mean? This is my hope.
That's your hope. I feel like there's definitely going to be a cliffhanger.
Because we've been through that. We've been through that with Battlestar Galactica and Crossroads Part 2, I
know. I have a suspicion that they are going to end it with a cliffhanger moment, and I hope it's not, "Don't call me that, my name is Voke."
Yeah, I hope they kind of resolve that too, but I guess we'll find out. Anyway, the important news here is that Star Trek Discovery will be back January 7th. That's when we can all, dig deep into, what's going on in these last 6 weeks and everything like that. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I know that you're looking forward to it just as much as I am. And I
am so.
I know. I mean, because you're just a naturally enthusiastic guy.
I have to restrain myself sometimes because I have a tendency to dance.
You're someone who really, really buys into hype. Like, I've never seen you not hyped for something.
Yeah, I've already got my Justice League t-shirt and and cap and jeggings all ready for the midnight screening of Justice League on, let's say, Wednesday. Is that right?
It already happened, so there you go.
Damn it.
Anyway, yes. In the meantime, we'll be here talking about Discovery on the Edge, and in the meantime, let's take a listen to see what Brandon and Amy have to say about Into the Forest I Go.
Well, thank you so much, Mike and Max, for that wonderful introduction. We greatly appreciate you passing the baton over to us so we can discuss Into the Forest I Go. Does that not conjure up images of Disney movies to you? Bambi running through, going to be Twitter-pated. What do you think?
Absolutely. Snow White with all the little animals coming. It's going to be such a nice episode.
It also, I think it has a little bit of a dark connotation with, the whole concept of, Into the Woods, Little Red Riding Hood. You always meet something bad in the forest.
Okay. That's an interesting take on the title, because I always just interpret it as, something giddy and little rabbits and little Bambi, and it's all fun. But yeah, okay, I guess, we do find dark things in the forest as well. When I was a kid, those things like the Disney movies of what's the one with the Headless Horseman?
Ichabod Crane.
Crane story and Snow White.
Yeah.
When those trees, when they would do that lighting effect with the arms and stuff, I couldn't stop looking, but it freaked me out so much. So I loved those when I was a kid. That one freaked me out. And when he's pouring the salt on that hard-boiled egg, and it just gets really tall, and then he goes to eat it. Oh, the memories of youth. Anywho, we're not here to talk about Disney tonight. We're here to talk about some Star Trek. And as you've heard already, Amy Nelson is here joining me, and we've got a special guest, Sarah. What's your last name, Sarah?
Buck.
Okay, I was going to say something else, but that's not right.
Like the forest creature.
Yes.
Like a buck, a deer, a doe, a deer.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to The Edge. This is not your first time on The Edge, though. You've been on a commentary, I believe.
Yeah, I've been on a couple commentaries.
And postcards.
So
listeners know her well.
Live shows. Yeah.
Good. Well, we are going to be talking. We've got lots to talk about in this episode. From what I've heard online, general consensus is this is the favorite episode of the series so far. I haven't heard too much negative about this episode. People are loving it, and there's quite a few things to talk about. So the first place I want to start talking about tonight is 133 micro jumps in under 4 minutes. That was a visually stunning part of the episode. I'm I'm not a huge fan of the spore drive thing. And when the Discovery saucer section was spinning, I'm like, man, there's just so much cheese on my TV right now when that's happening. But and I don't know. It looks so cool, but I just don't buy that it would like do this drop and then appear somewhere else by dropping. And it looks awesome. It looks stunning, but I just don't think it's right, you know. But I can't deny it. This was an amazing, amazing scene. Watching it just go whoosh, 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 like all over the place. What'd you think, Sarah?
I thought it was amazing. It was a very tense and dramatic moment. I just found out a really fun fact about that number 133, that the writers originally had written in 525,600 jumps.
What?
As a nod to the song from Rent, Seasons of Love, because of Anthony Rapp. That 525,600 minutes. But they were like, okay, that's too high. That's too crazy. So they went with 133, which is a nod to the episode 33 from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, see, I read that too, and I'm like, I don't know that works as a nod for me. I know that's what they're saying, because it's not the same number, you know?
It's because it was a season premiere, 133.
Oh, okay. Oh, fine. I'll take it then. That's fine. Okay, I'll go for it.
Episode 1, titled 33, but yeah, which is one of my favorite episodes of Battlestar. But initially it was supposed to be that nod to Rent with Anthony Rapp, which I think they got in with that La Boheme reference in there.
Yeah.
So
tell me about that. What is that La Boheme? Because I know it's the song, but what is the song?
So the song from Rent is La Vie Boheme, but La Boheme is actually an opera, an Italian opera.
Okay.
That the play Rent, the musical, is based on.
I've never seen it, so I don't know
Me
this
neither.
play.
I mean, if you like Rent, you'll like it. If you hate Rent, you'll probably like La Boheme. So, yeah. So, yeah, it is the opera that, it has a very famous aria called, oh gosh, what is it? It's like, your tiny hand is so cold in mine. And so that's, so you can see how it's the same thing. These people live in, that bohemian life with like no money, but they believe in art and artistry and stuff. So, and then, so that was their cute little nod to the musical for Anthony Rapp.
Well, I haven't had to pay rent in a long time, but I tell you, I hate my mortgage, so. See, I caught the reference to the Caecilian Opera House because he had mentioned in the Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad about how they met, and he was humming that or whistling the Caecilian opera, right? And how terrible it sounded. So I caught that. So I just assumed that I'd misheard, and that was the name that he had mentioned to Burnham when he was telling the story, but I guess not. So, which is okay as well. Yeah. So, Amy, what did you think of this scene, though? Was it that visually stunning? What did you think?
It was. Just the whole production of it, it still amazes me even after 9 episodes. Like, you would just not see this on regular TV. I'm just so impressed. It seems very, well, to me, movie, and I don't know much about it. I'm no Mike Schindler, but I just love what I see on the TV. And to see all trying to pinpoint all of the different angles so that they can, figure out this cloak system. I don't know if I really buy that as much and why 133 was necessary. I would like to see the math behind that, but that's just me.
Yeah, see, when they talked about it originally, they're like, it'll take days for us to get all this information. And he's like, we don't have days, but we have a spore drive. And I'm like, well, I just don't get how they're making that jump. Like, how does the spore drive make them get the information so much quicker in 4 minutes rather than in several days? Sarah, what do you think about that? Why do you think the spore drive makes it quicker to get the information?
I think that, and since I am more of like a literature based person than a science based person, like a lot of the like science stuff I'm like, whatever. But as far as from story-wise, what I picked up on that was when they do the spore drive jumps, they clearly have a very sophisticated system recording and reporting all this data that they get from every single jump. You know, how Lorca showed Stamets that map that they'd been accruing, and that kind of data just isn't, you know, Stamets, even as an engineer, was like, oh my gosh, you're collecting all of this? So they have a very sophisticated recording data hooked up. So the way I understood it was that those spore drive jumps would allow them to collect data from, and 133 of them would be a pretty complete, you know, pictures from any and all angles they needed around that ship of the dead in order to calculate, because they mentioned an episode earlier about how they had theorized that it has to do with like bending, you know, light or something like that. So to look at different angles of those cloaked ships. So that's kind of the explanation my brain patched together as to why it was necessary. But I, like, a lot of the times I'm just like along for the ride with stuff like that. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm a fan of cheese though, so. Mm-hmm.
See, I found watching this, I've been watching with my daughter who's 7. And I've noticed something. Like, we started watching Waterworld last night, and she'll ask me a question, and I've noticed that as an adult, you know, when we're watching a movie or a TV show, we're more able to, whether we understand it or not, we're more able to dismiss it and just continue on with the story than a child is. So I'm having to try and explain these things to my daughter, and I'm like, I don't have any idea, Aubrey. Like, just watch it, right? But here I am, I'm fighting to try and come up with an answer to tell her because she's curious, you know? And like, we're watching Waterworld right now, and she's like, why does he have gills, right? So I had to try and explain to a 7-year-old how human beings may evolve gills if they lived on a planet that was all water, right? And, you know, it's hard for a little girl to understand, but I try to explain it the best that I can. And yeah, it's just interesting that when I'm watching it alone, I just go with the flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I don't really have to understand what it means. I can just go with the story.
Right.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, I'm an anthropologist, so all the anthropology stuff that, like, Burnham says and all that kind of stuff, like, makes complete sense to me. Yeah, that is how you would study someone from an anthropological standpoint. But, yeah, as far as, like, the engineering and stuff, I kind of have to just be like, I trust you guys. But I think that as far as 133, I think they, like, narratively, they just wanted it to sound like a terrifying number, considering we know the risks of using that spore drive. Yeah. And so narratively, that was a way to just make everybody be like, oh my gosh, Stamets is not going to make it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the way that Dr. Culber and was just like, we've got to get him out of here. We got to get out of here. He's like, how many more left? 96. You know, like it really is like, wow, this is taking a long time to do. It may only be 4 minutes, but it sure as heck doesn't feel like 4 minutes. It feels like 4 hours, you know? Mm-hmm. And just, you could just see in his eyes, you know, they made his eyes all red and puffy, like how it's affecting him like so drastically. And then he says that thing, he says something along the lines of, I can see it now in the forest. It's how they go, or something like that. I can't remember word for word what he says.
It was, there's a clearing in the meadow. That's how they get there.
What does that mean? What is this? I think this is like the key to the entire franchise. This one sentence here.
I don't know. Like, I'll let you guys, like, but I think that maybe that was him viewing the entrance into a parallel universe.
Okay. That's how
yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Because I think maybe that's where they end up at the end, so.
So now that you've said that, I like that. Okay, because, that mycelium spore room that we saw earlier on looks like a forest, right? And he says there's a clearing in the trees. That's how they get there. Maybe he's not going to be able to use this spore drive because it's affecting him. But then somehow they'll realize how they can get out because of this message. I think this sentence is important, and I think it's going to come back, because it's just so bizarre. But maybe they'll figure out, oh, he said this when he was doing his jump, so this is how we got to get out of here, Captain. So,
I see. Okay.
Right. So they call back to it later on. Mm-hmm. But speaking of the captain, did you guys see the screenshot of his iPad?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, so if you haven't seen it, Sarah, you got to check it out afterwards. So before Stamets jumps and he goes, and he screams, Lorca is entering in the coordinates of where they're going. And there's a big yellow thing that says override Lorca G. And the next says unknown.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Lorca intentionally
now
is
the only thing that I don't
Discovery.
Right, but the only thing I don't get about that is it had the numbers all the way through 133, and they've made those jumps, and it was 133 that was the unknown jump. So that's the only thing that's not clicking with me. Clearly, he did something, and I mean, he seemed surprised when they got to their final destination. He's like, "Where are we?" He seemed surprised. I
think that maybe he intended to change their direction, but I don't think he intended to end up where they did. Because I also think that kind of, because Stamets said last episode he's losing essentially himself in these jumps, and he was feeling like he wasn't going to be Stamets if he kept doing it. So I wonder if, and we had that moment from the beginning of the series where he, the mirror Stamets stands there and smirks out of that. So I wonder if there is more than one Stamets, inside it, or if it's some entity that got into him from the mycelial network, and that maybe he intended to take them somewhere else. That part. So maybe it was a joint effort unbeknownst to one another or something.
Amy, did Lorca do this on purpose?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
So in my mind, I was thinking, so we finish the 133, and then it was that last one to get back to the starbase. I thought that was the one that Lorca did the override for.
Yeah, that would have been the one that he did the override for, was the 133. But I assume that they've done 133, and then that's how many they needed to do to get all the data.
Right. So then I thought the next one was the one that he manipulated.
But it says 133 unknown.
So apparently, okay.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that's the only wrench in this thing for me.
Right. So there's been a lot of theories, and I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to land on. But, and the map, how cool was the map that we saw and all the data that we're collecting? And so those little pockets, those anomalies, in my headcanon, Lorca took us into one of those anomalies. He wants to explore.
To explore.
Yeah, and so I think we're in one of those anomalies, and we don't really know if it's a parallel, a mirror universe, what this area is, just that it's an anomaly. But Lorca did it full intention. And so when you say that Lorca was acting surprised, was he acting surprised on the bridge?
I felt so.
Okay, so I'm thinking that's an act.
It's a pretty darn good act.
Yeah, he's pretty darn shady.
Yeah, he's super shady. But yeah, and I don't think he had any intention from his facial expressions after talking to the Admiral. And I don't think that the Admiral was being open with Lorca either, because he's like, we want you to come back immediately. And that's how you lure a war criminal back to put them in prison, because technically Lorca and his crew are now war criminals. So I don't think Lorca had any intention of... I mean, he is part of the reason that the other admiral got captured by Klingons.
Cornwell,
he gave that look. Cornwell. He knew that was going to happen because she was going to decommission him.
Yes, okay. He took advantage of it. He is not responsible in any way for that. He proposed the idea to her, which is a shady thing to do, yes, but she's the admiral and made the decision to go. Right? So I don't...
He knew what would happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so. And he definitely took advantage of it. I got no issues with that. But she's the admiral and she gets to make the calls. So she knew she was going into a dangerous situation when she took that mission.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, this guy's so shady. He is absolutely shady. There's so many things that have gone on. I mean, like, going back to even early on, like this whole area where he's got all this stuff in the ship, like these skeletons and these weapons and stuff.
His personal room.
Oh my goodness. Like, why does he have this stuff all over?
He has a fascination with implements of torture, which, it is a sure indicator that someone has some issues. So,
So then what do you think is the relationship that he has with Burnham? Because there's something going on here, and everybody's aware of it, right? Like, even Tilly said that one time. Are you kidding? He's practically adopted you, right? And he's practically adopted Tyler. What do you think it could possibly be with Burnham? Amy?
I have not figured that out, and it's been bugging me ever since she came on the ship. And it's like, I'm going to have you be my science specialist, and you're going to serve your time here, and you're going to... Like, he has incorporated this purpose for her, but we all know the purpose is to serve him. Like, the first... not Tyler, but the one before him.
Landry.
Yeah, Landry. And she's like, yeah, if you're here, it's because Lorca wants you here. Like, that was very telling to me, too. And then when Tyler was like, well, I'd like to take Burnham with me. And he's like, no, she's going to stay here. Well,
because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Is what he said.
Yeah.
So why is he caring? Well, and I shouldn't say caring. Like, what is the advantage? Because I don't think that Lorca really cares. It's to his advantage for some reason.
Yes.
For me, it's all about his power and his manipulation and how it's going to serve him best.
She could be a trophy too, because he clearly is someone who likes his trophies.
Ooh.
So it could be, but he is weirdly obsessed with her, because there's also that earlier episode where Tyler takes her to when she needs to save Saruk, and not Saruk, her father, Spock's father, Sarek, yeah. I'm like, they're so similar. But where they go on that end, and Lorca in no uncertain terms tells Tyler, like, you bring her back alive or you don't come back. Like, if you let her die, I have no interest in you.
Exactly.
And then it's the same every time she's gone on a mission. He's been very hesitant. He's like, no, I need Burnham alive. Like, I don't know what it is. Some creepy obsession. I don't know if it's like a time travel thing where he's seen something in the future and he needs her for something, or if it's just like she's, to him, the ultimate wartime trophy, because that's what that room is. It's a room full of war weapons, and she's the one who started the Federation Klingon War. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's something going on there, but we don't have enough information yet to even guess. I was talking with somebody online the other day, and they're like, why are people, so obsessed with thinking that these Pavans might be evil still? Like, it was in response to the episode that we did there, Amy, and we're talking about the Pavans. And, television and the way that it's written nowadays, and with the advent of social media, like, we are expecting a twist. That's the way that television is written nowadays, is there's always a twist around the corner in order to keep us interested and to keep us tuning in for more. I mean, I look at a show like Lost. I think Lost is one of the prime examples of a show where its whole shtick was having a twist, some crazy weird way to end the episode, and they would plot these. They would just throw these threads all around and pick them up whenever they felt like it. I mean, like for that one episode, it's a season 1, like episode 10, a storyline in Lost where there's these 2 dead bodies in a cave. Right? And I'm watching the show. I'm like, when are they going to tell us who these 2 dead bodies are? They have to come back to it. And it's this, like the second last episode of the entire series that they finally address what those 2 bodies were. You know, and so we're expecting these twists nowadays. And so the audience, because there's always a twist, they're coming up with these more elaborate conspiracy theories for their episodes because they don't want to get caught off guard while they're watching a show. Yeah. You know, it catches people off guard all the time, and they're like, I don't know if people can handle it anymore with all these crazy twists and turns, you know?
Well, sometimes fan theories get too much for me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, it's time for me to not read this Facebook. But they can be fun. Yeah, they can. Well, I mean, like, we're getting a little off topic, but I mean, the theory of Jon Snow, like I read that a couple of seasons ago, like it was season 2 or 3 or something like this that I read this theory of who Jon Snow ultimately would end up being, and I'm like, makes sense to me, right? And that's ended up being what it was. It turned out to be true, and they finally gave it. They had this predicted like 4 seasons before they revealed it. And wow. I don't watch it. They actually had it predicted from the beginning because they were trying to negotiate getting the rights to make it into a show, the 2 creators of Game of Thrones. And the reason George R.R. Martin finally was like, okay, we can talk rights, was because they came to him with that theory. Was the
we won't say what it is. We don't. There's no Game of Thrones spoilers here, but I don't know. It's people are just expecting that twist, expecting that turn, and so that's why they're coming up with these crazy theories. And there's other shows out there. I read an article that I don't watch the show, but some Mr. Robot or something. There was like some crazy plot twist that fans had predicted like a couple of seasons before. And I mean, like that kind of leads us into our Tyler theory, right? I mean, like fans had this predicted, you know, like 15 minutes after the first episode aired, like not quite, but you know, as soon as Ash Tyler was shown on screen, they're like, oh, he's Voke. And that was episode 5, and here we are, episode 9, and we still don't have an answer. Right. You know? And I go back to my daughter, so we were watching this last episode, and when Tyler's like on his knees in front of Laurel in the security room there, I paused it, and she's like, what is going on? Why is he saying this stuff to her? And I said, okay, so there's this fan theory out there that he's Voke, and I explained it to her, and her eyes just went like, like they just went wide, like, because she had forgotten about Voke, because we haven't seen him since episode 4 or whatever it was, right? Yeah. So, I don't know, like, it was lovely to watch that in her eyes, but
I think that if anything did have light shown upon it, this episode was that Tyler is not completely Voke.
Right.
That he is a real and complete human, but from what it looks like, not completely anymore.
Mm-hmm. So you think his physical body is human, but there's some kind of Katra and this is what I've been hearing, that somewhere in his brain, like Voke was downloaded into Tyler's body.
Yeah.
I showed
don't
some, like,
believe
bone
that at all.
saws and stuff.
See, that's okay. Call me crazy. So one of the things where I was like, okay, Tyler's not Voke, because when we saw Tyler, and then, you know, I pointed out Mud, I think it was, oh, you're so tall. So Tyler is obviously much, much taller than what we saw Voke. So then I'm like, oh, in one of my postcards, I'm like, well, you know, maybe they extended his legs and stuff. And then on this episode, they had the saw thing, and I'm like, aha, they did extend his legs. Nice. I know, call me crazy.
No, there was definitely torture, but I think that Tyler and the backstory we've heard from him are true. I think he was a Starfleet officer, and his backstory about living in Seattle and stuff, I think that he has those memories and those are his memories, but I think they did something to him. Clearly he's the character in the series that embodies kind of that, you know, horrible things were done to him, and he's been inhabited, be that literally or metaphorically, by something Klingon, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out where that goes. Since we're starting to talk about Voq, you guys okay if I start my soapbox here? Not really soapbox, but I've got a letter that I've written that I want to read in this episode here. And after the letter's done, we're going to get into the discussion about it. And, you know, for those that are listening, you know, if you have young people listening, this may be the time where you want to pause it and come back to the episode later. But not necessarily for this episode, but for the following discussion that's going to occur here. So I'm going to read a little bit to you guys. It's a little bit long, but just bear with me while I read this here, because this is something that was heavy on my chest while listening to discussions about this episode and while watching the episode. The aspect of the story that I feel is most relevant to today is the sexual assault of Ash Tyler and its portrayal in this episode. Star Trek has never done a good job of portraying this topic. I feel the reason for this is because it is a hard topic to address, and up until recently, a topic that is not discussed in general conversation. The recent social media wave of #MeToo has brought awareness to the masses of just how prevalent sexual assault and sexual harassment is in the world today, but it also brings an awareness of people's ignorance on the subject. With Anthony Rapp's recent statement regarding his alleged assault by Kevin Spacey and the recent allegations against George Takei, I was witness to some disgusting comments by users of Twitter and Facebook, yet I was also witness to some other shocking responses of a different nature. We live in a time where social media is so prevalent and so much a part of our everyday interaction with people, yet written communication is the worst way to talk to somebody. The reason it is such a terrible way to communicate is because the reader, more often than not, places their own current emotions behind what they are reading. If they are in an agitated state, as the topic of sexual assault would understandably elicit, then they are reading the comments in an agitated way. I saw comments by people that were clearly designed to be rude and offensive, but I've also seen arguments occur because people simply misread the intent of the person writing the post. If the posters on the discussion simply would have paused for a moment, taken a breath, and reread the comment they were replying to, they would see that a discussion was starting to form, yet the discussion died a crib death because instead an argument bloomed. I find that so sad. We recently had a post in the Babel conference discussing the alleged assault by George Takei, and what I saw was people having a discussion on the issue. And as an administrator of the Babel conference, I was PM'd that the thread we had on George Takei should be taken down or at least blocked from having further comments made. The admins of the Babel conference discussed it, and we chose to leave the thread active because other than a few ignorant comments, there was no arguing going on, and we can't shut down the discussion simply because it makes us uncomfortable. I recorded an episode of Warp 5 a few weeks ago with Amy Nelson and Richard Marquez, and the episodes had not yet been released. After we recorded it, I had several back and forth discussions with Amy about our episode, and I told her that I did not want to release the episode because I was worried about blowback from the audience. I was worried that our intentions behind the podcast would be misinterpreted. I gave a rough cut of the episode to a friend to get an outsider's perspective and was told that I absolutely must release the episode. I was glad to receive the feedback, but I was also disappointed in myself because I was ready to censor myself on a very difficult and important subject because I was convinced that it would be misunderstood. It's a topic that I'm not well educated on, and it's a topic that desperately needs to be discussed. I was uncomfortable with the discussion after I had it. Frankly, it should make us feel uncomfortable. There's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation that I feel is an amazing episode because of how powerful it is. Violations. This is an episode that is ripe with topics to discuss, yet the majority of my interactions on this episode have resulted in people not wanting to address the episode simply because they did that thing with Troy that they always do with Troy. It's not an easy episode to watch. It's an incredibly challenging episode to watch. But again, it should be challenging to watch because of the topic. We live in a scary time. We live in a time where a lot of evil actions are being brought out into the open. And I beg the listeners and I beg people on social media to pause and reflect what is being said before responding. Yes, there are trolls out there, and they shouldn't be addressed. They should be ignored. But there are also confused and frightened people just like me that are becoming afraid of interacting on these topics because of their fear of how their questions will be received. I was listening to Mission Log Live this week, and one of the guests said, and I'm paraphrasing, the last thing people want to hear is what a white male has to say, but I'm saddened by this. I'm saddened by this because I've said this as well. We're in a time right now where people are censoring themselves because of who they are. Why is my opinion any less valid because I'm a white male? Why do I feel this way at this time? People are confused right now because there is a lot happening. Times are changing and awareness of these horrible issues are rising, but it takes people time to understand these changes and these topics. To transition to this topic, Heather Barker, who's appeared on The Edge in Warp 5, created a poll and discussion thread on Twitter. One of the ones that I saw was, I need to know, did you feel that the sexual assault scene in Discovery was eroticized? Did it look like sex, quote unquote? Did it make you sick to your stomach? Did you understand that it was sexual assault? And I saw a bunch of responses of like, of course it did, people would be sick to think other ways, or if somebody thinks that it's erotic, it says more than that about them. And due to the way that the comments were responding, she modified it with a poll as follows. Let me phrase it this way. If you had not already had the knowledge that the sex between Tyler and L'Rell was rape, would you have understood it as such from that scene? And the thing is, I also viewed the scene from an erotic standpoint. Taken out of context, it was filmed in a sensualized manner. And when I watched the episode for the first time, I was confused as to what I was watching. As Star Trek fans, we know how Klingons have sex. Just look at how Worf and Dax were portrayed, or how the female Klingon that Riker created for Worf and Hyde and Q reacted. It's violent, and there's growling. And that's what also was shown in this scene. The only thing that keeps coming to mind is, how could people have responded had I been the one to ask that same question on social media? That's what I've written. That's how I feel. And I mean, I think this is a discussion that needs to be had. This is an important discussion. I don't understand everything, and I'm trying to understand. Had this happened 2 years ago, I would have put a wall up to this and not wanted to discuss this at all. But it's taken me 2 years of being exposed to social media, to listening to other people's points of view and discussing. It takes time for people to wrap their brains around something like this. And I cannot believe that this came out now when all of this stuff is going on. But it's important that this episode came out right now because of what's going on social media right now. It's not a good time for anybody right now. And there's a lot of confused people out there. So, Amy and Sarah, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that, but
I think most importantly is, like what I have seen is a lot of victim blaming and a lot of questioning victims' validity. And that's what I hear on the news, and that's what I see.
Yeah.
On Facebook, and that's exactly why these kinds of things have not come out earlier.
Yeah.
This has been happening since the beginning of time, and the reason that people are coming out now is because suddenly after Harvey Weinstein, people started taking allegations of sexual assault seriously, whereas before they were inevitably brushed off or under the rug. And it's really important not to victim blame. It's really important to believe people when they come forward. Everybody's afraid of false accusations, but those happen so very rarely. There are legal penalties for huge fines, including jail time for leveling false allegations. So if someone comes forward to make an allegation, like, they have everything to lose, because regardless of whether or not the legal system believes them, most people aren't going to.
Yeah.
And they have everything to lose. They're going to be branded with this for the rest of their lives. And there's nothing to gain except maybe this doesn't happen to someone else.
Right. And, you know, as a person, like, what I see in this episode here is, how am I supposed to respond to this when I see these situations? How am I supposed to respond when I see my friend posting on social media during the Me Too event that they're like, oh yeah, I was just walking down the street and some guy whipped his pants down in front of me. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And in this episode, it showed me what I can do. And you just need to be there to support the people that go through these travesties. You know, and I don't like seeing the victim blaming that's out there, because it's boiling it down. You're creating a generalization. And what I see in this episode, this is the best representation of a sexual assault that I've seen in Star Trek yet. And it's amazing that it's happened at this time, because Burnham was there to support him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing, first of all. And on the Babel conference, I'm not sure if people recognized or read Andrea's comment, and she was talking about PTSD and how realistic it was. She suffers from it, and says that scene was the most realistic and the most true to what she has seen and experienced with her own flashbacks and what she's dealt with in that community of others who have PTSD. And I was just so impressed and inspired by her courage to come forth in social media, as we know, that can be so harsh, and just really applaud her courage for that. One thing that I was thinking in seeing that, it's like when Tyler was, explaining the situation and seeing it, and he was explaining it to Tyler, it's like he was almost apologizing for it. Like, I had to do this to save my life, and I'm still alive because I did this. But is he suffering guilt for that? And I don't want that to happen, to anyone. And I'm sure, like, victims, maybe blame themselves and then compound that with other people not even believing them. I mean, there's a reason why these victims don't come forward. It's not just about the others. It's what you're going through yourself, and are you placing blame on yourself, which we hope no one does, because it is not your fault. It is.
But I think that's the common thing, and that's clearly what they were representing with Tyler. Like, he was clearly blaming himself in this scene. I think it'd be, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of goes to illustrate the false narrative that exists about rape, especially like when it's portrayed in media. It's almost always violent, and almost always that really easy to accept portrayal, where most rape isn't like that. You have to take into account power dynamics. You have to take into account that most women are raped by someone they know and trust. Like, we see that all the time for child victims, and people have no problem being like, yeah, that's wrong, even if the person, like, convince the child otherwise, but that's the whole thing about consent. As far as the scene being read as erotic, it was filmed as a sexual act. And that's because, and Tyler even said he encouraged it so he could survive. And the thing is, when you're in that dynamic, L'Rell as your captor and your torturer, even if she asks you and you say yes to that, it's not really giving consent, because you know that if you say no, you're either going to get beaten or murdered. For a lot of men and women who are in those kinds of power dynamics, you could get kicked out of your house. There's all these different imbalances of power, that go into consenting to have sex with someone. So even if he went, quote unquote, willingly to bed with her, you can't consent to having sex with your torturer.
Right. And one of the other things that I think is important about this as well that I haven't heard anyone mention yet is, there was so many comments about how it took so long for Anthony Rapp to come forward. Why did it take so long? Why did you wait so long? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, here we've even got this. Yes, maybe it's not as long as that, but Tyler didn't talk about it right away. People need to address it when they're ready to address it. And, unfortunately, he was forced into addressing it by being confronted by his attacker. But people will address it when they are ready to address it. You can't just expect them to have it happen and then walk out the door and say, wait a minute, this just happened. It's a traumatic event in people's lives. And it takes time to deal with it and to comprehend what happened to them.
A lot of people don't even understand that once that happens, sometimes it's very clear in your mind that your consent has just been removed from you and something you didn't want to happen just happened. Sometimes you blame yourself. You say, well, I made a bad choice. That was a bad choice. I shouldn't have done that. And, you kind of push it aside and try not to think about it because it was so traumatizing. And later, it inevitably will come back later and get you, so to speak. So there's always that feeling of you could have done something to stop it, or, my decision is what put me in this situation and I was being stupid, which is just not... It's not true, and it's not right to berate yourself like that, but it's almost like your mind's trying to justify it,
Amy, I'm glad that you brought that up about, what was her name you said?
Andrea.
Because I don't know what PTSD is. I have no clue. I've never experienced it. I don't know anybody who has experienced it. This is a completely foreign concept to me. And so to hear that this is an accurate representation of what it is good to know. Because I don't know what it is. I work at an office, the most traumatic thing that happens to me is the photocopier's out of paper, at my job. I can't comprehend things like that. So to see things like this portrayed reasonably accurately on television is a good thing, and I'm very glad for. And I mean, this is a hard episode to watch. It's a great episode. It's a wonderful episode, but there's some hard stuff in here to address. And I think we had to talk about it because it is very important in many ways to discuss it and learn. So I hope people...
And I think it's that reality that Discovery chose to portray these situations in that allows for these discussions. They're not minimizing it. I don't think they're making it sensational and larger than it is. And hearing that, this is so realistic of these flashbacks and stuff, it allows for real discussion to happen instead of being, over the top, oh, that's so wrong, or minimizing it, So kudos to the Discovery writers there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also suffer from PTSD, and I think they really did do a good job portraying that. They have throughout the season, because I think that he's shown signs of it even in other episodes. So
okay. Well, we're going to move on now to our final topic. Unless there's anything else you want to add to that, I think we'll move on to our last topic here.
Yes.
Okay. Stamets and Culber, the kiss.
Yay!
The first gay kiss. So
yes, it is.
The reason I say that, well, let's talk, well, I'll talk about that later. So I love Stamets and Culber together. Like, to me, for some reason, they seem so sincere, authentic, truly in love. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why is it that I like those two when in general, I don't even like my Star Trek characters to really have relationships. Like, I mean, I know I love Troy and everything, but blah, blah, blah. But these two, I just feel are so good. And when Stamets was in the chamber and he looks at his Dr. Culber, like tears in my eyes, I felt it to my core how much that they loved each other. And I was so happy to see it. I can't even stop gushing about how much I like it. And that is so surprising to me.
It was like, those two are amazing actors because they really do exude this kind of genuine and real affection for each other when they're acting those scenes. And it gets me every time.
And the thing is, they're not even on screen together that often.
No,
so that's what's even more confounding me. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, it's about time for there to be, a gay relationship in Star Trek, and I am so glad that when they put it in, they wrote it wonderfully. The actors are acting it wonderfully, and it is a really beautiful and healthy relationship. That's, I think, for me, what is just like, it's so nice to see some healthy relationships portrayed on television, especially those like that we're not used to seeing on television, because it's so much easier for a writer to pump up the drama by making it, maybe not a great relationship, but it's nice to see some healthy between, Burnham being very supportive and empathetic towards Tyler, and the really touching, beautiful relationship between the Doctor and Stamets. It's nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's well done. Again, I bring it back to watching with Aubrey. I mean, we don't have any gay friends. We're not exposed to gay culture a lot, so we're watching it last night, and she didn't clue in that they were having a relationship. So when they kissed, like, she did that, like she pulled her head back with a squint, like, and then looked at me, and I paused it and I said, "They're two men that love each other." And then she just looked back at the TV, and we just continued to watch, and like, the world didn't end. I'm just glad for the Star Trek fans that the world didn't end now that we've had this, right? So,
yeah.
Because, oh boy, I don't, I don't have an issue with it. It's fine. It doesn't bother me, and I don't know why it bothers anybody else, and I don't know.
Well, the world almost did end in Beyond when Sulu put his arm around his partner when they came off the ship. That was almost world ending for what I seemed was a great, beautiful moment. But there were many, many people who did not appreciate, and I heard the comments, they're forcing it down my throat, da, da, da.
There people still are, and that's the thing with trolls, is that they're always going to be there. Don't feed the trolls, people. Okay? Like, there are people out there who are just going to be rude for the sake of being rude, and you can't interact with them. Like, just let them go. And I'm not going to sing, okay? I'm not going to sing Let It Go, but you gotta let it go. Let the trolls go.
So, I fell victim to a troller, and it's my own fault. Because I know. Oh. I was just like, why am I doing this? Stop texting. Okay, so I really innocently, so when you, Brandon, say, well, sometimes you're afraid because you're this, a white guy, then what do you know? And so I get that same feeling too. Born and raised in Utah, what could be more, blinders on and sheltered life, and I'm this white female, straight. And so I obviously know nothing. And so I have enjoyed learning and, really seriously learning. And I've learned a lot with the Star Trek community. So when the comment was made, and there were many, I feel represented, the first gay kiss, and seriously, just all in innocence, I was like, do we still need that qualifier of gay? And I'm just asking for information because I don't know the pulse on the gay community. So I was asking, do we need the qualifier? Because now we don't need the qualifier of interracial kiss, right? We've moved on from that. So I was just asking, and oh boy, did I get an earful from this one person. And I was like, I'm just asking, if we need the qualifier, I'm happy to say the first gay kiss. I'm happy to do it, because I think it's amazing. I think their love is great, and I'm not weirded out by it. So I just want to know. And so it was very nice. There were some people on the conference, on the Babel conference, that were like, we don't need it. I feel like that we are progressing. And then some people are saying, yes, we still need it. So I don't know exactly where it's at.
I don't know either. I got no clue.
Yeah.
You're going to get stuff from both sides, I think, as far as that is, because definitely some people really like to have that identification within the gay community is like, I do not live a straight life. My relationship is not a straight relationship. So there's lots of people. And then there's other people who just want to feel normalized and to stop having to be like, oh, my relationship's so atypical of, American or whatever society. So, there's a 50-50 split. So, you just never know. And I'm like, for the people, I just, usually I'm like, I will let you decide. My opinion doesn't matter because, I'm not living the same life as you, and you get to decide what you want to label yourself as.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking. I'm like, if we're calling it a gay kiss, then I want to, honor and respect that that's where it's at. If we're not calling it a gay kiss, then I don't, I was asking the source in that thread, because everyone was, feeling represented and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go straight to the horse's mouth and see what take the temp is and where are we at with this? And oh boy, I got talking to.
The temperature's hot. The temperature's still very hot.
Yes.
Well, and I was watching After Trek, and the writers and Sonequa Martin Green referred to it as the first kiss between two males.
Okay.
In Star Trek history. So they decided to go with the gender qualifier as opposed
because it's not
to
the first gay kiss. We had that one in Rejoined in DS9, right? So, I mean, it's not the first gay kiss, right? Because we had Dax and I don't remember her name. Khan, I think her name was, right?
Well, and I think with those, I think there were little asterisks with those that that was the mirror universe, right?
No, it was on D Space Nine in season 3. Dax and Khan were married in a previous life, and they got involved in this one, and the current hosts were women, and they kissed.
Oh,
it's a season 3 episode. So
okay, I apologize.
Which is a lot. I think it's a lot different because females kissing has always been exoticized and praised in media.
Big time.
Whereas gay men, like, they're kept off camera because too many people think that's disgusting. Two women kiss, people are either way too excited by it and they need to chill, or people don't really care. But if two men kiss, that's where you get the anger. That's where you get the, like, just, ew, gross, you know, these stupid trolls who just get upset about it and can't handle it. So it's, I think the fact that it was the first kiss between two gay males is huge.
Is more significant, yeah. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So an important episode all around, and I love it. I mean, I think it's great. Sarah, Amy, do you have any final thoughts on the episode? Anything else we missed you think we need to talk about? Sarah?
I don't think there's any big points that we missed. I'm just excited for January because, like, I want to see where they are. I'm almost thinking they don't get out of the mirror universe if that's where they are. Maybe that's why we don't have, you know, a lot of talk about the Discovery in later Trek series, because maybe that magic ship that was written off as a phantom hero in the Klingon War got lost in a mirror universe. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Amy?
Yeah, I am looking forward, obviously, to January. I'm going to try and read Desperate Hours. I know I'm behind, but I'm also really looking forward to the comics coming out that's covering the Klingons. So I'm thinking I can probably read those more than a book. But I really am loving Discovery. And a lot of people are asking, not a lot, a few people have asked, would you like Discovery if it wasn't Star Trek? Like, because, you know, everyone knows, well, we're podcasting, that we love Star Trek. So they could have put on anything. Would I have still loved it? I do believe that I am loving it in part because I love Star Trek. But if I could separate it and say, would I watch this regularly? I think I would. And
I would too.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this whole new show and the money that they're throwing into it with the production and the costumes and the makeup, and just everything is just blowing my mind. I love, love, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I too am very excited for January. It can't come quick enough. This splitting of the seasons is garbage, in my opinion. They need to just get it out now. I want more Star Trek right now. So, but
they've
that's
got to
for
play all the
shows.
Christmas specials for the next month and a half.
Yeah, because nobody has Netflix anymore, right? But I don't know. Like, it's an exciting time. I don't even want to venture a guess because, you know, they're clearly, in my opinion, I guess, yeah, they're in some type of mirror universe. Maybe not, you know, the mirror universe we've seen multiple times, but they're clearly elsewhere. And I'm looking forward to it. I want to know what all that debris is that they found themselves in the center of. I want to know which kind of ships those are. I don't know what they are.
And very excited that Jonathan Frakes will be directing episode 10.
Yeah, he's directing
I can't wait to see his.
Yes.
The one shout out that I want to give, one special shout out is I'm pretty sure I'm right on this here. So I saw a picture online. I want to give a big shout out to Vic Mignogna. And he's the man who's been doing Star Trek Continues.
Yes.
And the final episode of Star Trek Continues has just come out, and somebody posted a screenshot that he's in his room, and he's got a model of the Discovery on his ship. So you're a gentleman and a scholar, Vic. I love you. That's an awesome homage, an awesome tribute. Thank you. Vic's an amazing Star Trek fan, and I haven't had a chance to watch that one yet because I've been watching Star Trek Discovery all week, but I'm going to watch that one tonight, I think, after we're done recording here. So, but Star Trek Discovery's season finale, mid-season finale, is not the only thing we've been discussing here on the network this past week. Yes, it is. But please take a listen to this other clip and see what else you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, the 602 Club.
I know, I went all in. Yeah, I think if it came up short, I think there was going to be a lot of screen caps with a lot of people. I think even on podcasts, I've been throwing it all out. Oh, this is going to be one of the best. Trust me on this one. Yeah, Thor 2, ignore that. This one will be the bee's knees, as it were. So, yeah, there was a lot of pressure. Right? I don't think just on Marvel and Taiki Waititi, but on me, myself, with my audacious claims.
Warp 5.
I tweeted John Billingsley last night while I was watching this episode. I'm like, I gotta admit, if I'm alone on the ship, I'm walking around naked too.
Okay. All right. So that was like my next question, just getting that. And Brandon's already answered it, which, I thought that would probably be his answer.
To the journey!
I always want to know, why haven't they done a Guardian of Forever movie in general? For me, that's like such a cool go-to concept. Yeah. Like, if you're going to make a Star Trek movie, get the Guardian of Forever in there. That would be awesome. And no one has ever thought that was cool enough to do yet. So we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it never really gets reprised that much, does it? Except, obviously, in the animated series. We do get the Iconian Gateways later, which are a similar sort of concept, aren't they? But
not the same.
Well, they don't talk back to you.
I don't think you can travel through time with those, can you? I think they're more just space.
The final frontier. These are the... Oh, sorry.
Meta Treks.
I'm feeling a Star Trek Stranger Things mashup where Spock starts playing with the lights on the Enterprise and Captain Kirk strings a bunch of Christmas lights around his quarters. And
that's actually what happened in that episode of The Next Generation when there are the dark matter pockets. That was actually Spock just messing with him.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on the iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review. That helps other listeners to find our show. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select The Edge. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. Sarah, where can people find you when you're not trying to do 133 micro jumps?
Oh, man. That's such a tough jump number. I can be found on Twitter at IAM Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, Buck.
Amy, where can people find you when you're not overriding our destination and sending us into an alternate reality?
Oh, I love that. Well, you can find me here on the network. I host Earl Grey. I also... I'm here on the Edge, and I'm on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on Facebook at the Babel Conference, so you can find me there. And Brandon, where can people find you? I'm no good at this.
Where can you find me when I'm not doing a knife-to-knife battle with Kol, the leader of the Klingon Empire?
There you go. Yes, please.
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Mutala. You can find me here on the network with a show called Warp 5, which is all about Star Trek Enterprise. You can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network with my friends Chris and Tom, where we have a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, and we're neck-deep in Alfred Hitchcock's silent movies right now, so be sure to check us out over there. We're also on Twitter at Good Evening Pod.
I don't know. Have you heard me on Discoville? I've been over there a couple times on the Fandom Podcast Network.
I have way too many podcasts to listen to. I do not listen to Discoville, but I do know you have been on it.
Yeah, okay. All right. See how you are.
I don't... Oh, yes, Amy. And how many of my Good Evening podcasts have you listened to?
Oh, well... Let's see. We're moving on.
Shots fired.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm to get all the details. Perks include early access to the episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month, and we greatly appreciate any support that you can give us, and we hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/trekfm.
We would like to thank our associate producers, and they are Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, and Richard Rutledge. Thank you so much for supporting The Edge and Trek FM.
Well, over the next few weeks, we're going to keep on trucking with an episode every week. The Edge will be here. Our sub-shows will not, but we'll keep bringing you content throughout the Christmas season until January 12th, when we'll be reviewing the episode number 10, I guess 10. It is, hey? Which is called... What's it called again? Somebody said it sounded like a Nine Inch Nails song. But
fitting.
Anyways, yeah, something like that. Distort Me or Disturb Me or something like that. I can't remember what it's called at the top of my head. And, yeah, until then, we'll see you out there on the edge.